committee. This meeting has been properly noticed. Roll call will show that 2 of the committee members are present. We do, in fact, have a quorum. Trustee Wecken is not present. Also in attendance, village engineer and village public works superintendent. The minutes from our last meeting, which was held on 20 September, have been distributed for your prior review. Any additions or corrections to those minutes as drafted?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Approval has been moved. I'll second that motion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and that is carried. Our first agenda item is a request for a second driveway opening at 719 Monroe Street North. This is available for discussion and a possible recommendation. I'll call upon you, Mark, for a presentation of this issue, and then we do have a gentleman in attendance tonight with respect to that issue.
Basically, the way our municipal code reads that if anytime there's going to be more than one driveway on a property, it has to have board approval. And basically, Mr. Kramer owns 719 Monroe Street North. They went and installed a driveway to the garage, a new driveway there. The garage actually changed place. Present owner owned the property, actually changed garage opening, so it was on the, and that required a different driveway opening coming in to the garage. And when I was up there, I explained to him that he would have to abandon, according to our code, that the other driveway would have to be abandoned. At that time, he requested if they could keep the existing driveway opening. This basically, they'd like to have a like horseshoe around that little area in front of the garage. I kind of made you up a little sketch of what they're looking at. Basically, the reason that they're requesting is number one, there's only 16 feet from behind the curb to the front of the garage, which most normal vehicles cannot sit in that space. The other thing, too, is that because on that side, on the north side of Monroe Street, where this house is located, there is no parking allowed during daytime hours when school is in session. So I told him that basically he would have to come to this committee, and also it would have to be, recommendation from this committee would have to go to the board. 2 driveways have to be approved by the village board.
Is there any position on this from a public safety standpoint? Has the police department looked at this at all from a traffic safety
Basically, he
standpoint?
would, this would in no way, the setbacks that, he's far enough away from both setbacks on both sides of him. He is right on the corner of 8th Street. He's also out of the vision triangle, so there I don't see any safety issue there at all. So,
I'll move approval of request for second driveway open at 719 Monroe Street North.
I'll second that for purposes of discussion and consideration. So we now have an agenda, an action item on the floor.
Yeah.
Sir, why don't you take the podium so that we can dialogue and discuss this a little bit. I drove past the property the other day and I drove past it again tonight, so I'm familiar with it. Why don't you just identify yourself for the record and then just give us some narrative why you're requesting.
Okay. Rich Kramer, 523 Wisconsin Street, Hudson. I'm the father of the owner of 719 Monroe Street North. He's not here because he's at work. We'd like to keep the original opening because he'd like to put a horseshoe in, being that from curb to the garage is 16 feet and his vehicle is 17 and a half feet. And also, the house is 21 feet from the curb, so it's pretty crowded there. It's the original home, and the garage is original also, but they changed the doors from the east to the south on that garage. And just for parking purposes and to get off the street during school, there's no parking on that side. That's what we'd like to do.
Is your vision for it that it would be a circle? You could come in either curb cut and go out the other curb cut
Either
And
way.
It's a small spot, but that's what
You could
you
go-
want to do?
Between the two openings, there's 20, was it marked 20 feet, I think?
20 feet.
So we'd either come in the east or the west, you could go either way. And then you'd be totally off the road.
Mark, from the standpoint of this being any kind of a precedent-setting issue, do you see this as a total standalone issue, or with the closeness of these curb cuts, with respect to the statute requirements that we've got right now, would this set any precedent for us for the future?
We have other properties in the village that do have the horseshoes type, and the village board has approved those. Basically with this is the only reason when he first came to me, and the reason I kind of agree with it, is because of how this lot is not very deep. It's only 50 feet deep. Everything encroaches, no matter what, you're gonna be, it's a very small lot. To me, they're trying to at least get the vehicles off the streets, and, you know, and actually, to me, I think it's gonna be actually safer than it would be if you have, you know, the cars encroaching on the road, especially because now any typical vehicle, a pickup truck would park in his driveway, his new driveway, basically it's gonna be sitting on so far, you're gonna have the kids out walking around it, you know, more out in the street trying to pass it, and that's,
And I think I heard you say that the length of the truck would extend, if it was pulled right up to the door of the garage, it would extend actually past the curb into the street?
Right.
Okay.
It's not over lengthy vehicle, it's a Jeep,
yeah. And that's
No, I
a-
understand,
It's not a
just
pickup
because,
truck or
just
anything.
because of the shortness of the driveway.
right.
So if they had a larger vehicle, stopped and pulled in that driveway, it'd be sitting out even farther in the street.
Mark, observations, questions, anything?
No, I
The only thing,
understand what we got, and we've seen it.
the only thing that would have to go with the emotion is that the homeowner has to have the understanding that even though he's gonna have a small grassy place behind the curb, there's still utilities in there and it's still village right away. So if we have to do work or utility has to do work, that possibly could be disturbed, that driveway.
Would you be intending, if this would be ultimately approved by the village board, would you be intending to put a hard surface down there, or would you maintain that as grass?
No, it'd either be concrete or brick.
Okay. And what you're saying is, if, in the event
Yeah.
we needed to do,
Cause there is utilities that run through that area.
Mhm.
It isn't a utility easement, you know, there is utilities behind that right away, just like every right away, especially
Yeah.
gas and.
well, I think I've heard enough.
Well, the issue on a permanent would be concrete, right? In case you had to dig it up, is that what you're talking about, utilities and that kind of thing? Yeah. And that'd be at our expense to repair or whatever.
Basically, any restoration done in the right of way, normally utility contractors will go back and patch it, but they're not gonna make it look like it's brand new. You have to understand, it is a utility. They're not required to do complete restoration. It is, you know,
Well, that's anywhere, you know, any,
It's
Yeah.
it's
standard,
Yeah.
this is a standard policy.
Standard caveat, yeah.
I can live with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You prepared to vote?
Yeah,
This would be a motion to recommend to the full village board approval of the request for a second curb cut, second driveway that would be closer than normal. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
aye.
And pose same sign, and that is carried. So what the procedure will be, this will now go to the full board with a recommendation from Public Works Committee and Public Works Director to approve it. I can't guarantee what the board will do, but we'll pass it with an affirmative recommendation.
Thank
So,
you.
okay?
Well, one last thing, off the record, or we're not on the record, but both curb cuts are already in, both entries are.
Correct.
Mhm. Yeah, aware of that.
Okay, thank you. When would,
First Tuesday of the month.
First Tuesday of next month. What is that, November 1st?
that's not over here.
Yep. November 1st.
November 1st.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd have to say, Richard, you probably don't need to be at the meeting.
I'd like to watch on TV, couldn't I?
Oh, well, I didn't know if you were gonna be gone. I don't see it to be a very contentious issue.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
See you later.
The 2011 Pacer rating updates. I assume, sir, we're turning to you.
All right, so you remember, I guess the last update we did was in October 2009.
And is this one of those things where our public works superintendent does all the work and you get the credit? Is that?
Well, kind of a joint venture, I guess you could look at it.
He does all the colored little maps. He gets
Yeah.
to do the painting and stuff.
So, I guess, it's a 2-year process. These ratings are good for 2 years, so, the next cycle is coming up, 2012-13. And according to state statutes, the village would have to have that updated by December 15th of this year. So, like what you had said before, typically in the past, what we've done is Mark has gone out and actually rated the streets, according to a manual that's put out from 1 to 10, 10 being just like what we did up on St. Croix Station. Reconstruct, that would be a 10, all the way down to a 1. I think within the village, the lowest one we currently have is a 3, which is on Lakeview Drive. So, that work would have to be done out in the field, and then from there, that information is forwarded off to us, and then we upload it into the Whistler program, the DOT Whistler program. And then along with that, then we would go through and regenerate new maps, what we've done in the past, and then forward those off to the village for their records. So,
Mark, refresh my memory. What did we budget for the Pacer updating? Was it $2,000?
Our total, I believe our total budget for engineering for this is $1,000.
so
1,000 was sticking in my mind. I like 1,000 better
see, we're looking at $750.
for this project.
Yeah.
And we're required to do it, right?
Yep.
Every
Yep.
2 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Yep. State statute wise. So, what we're looking for is, a recommendation to move forward that for not to exceed of $750 to do that work.
It would be completed by when?
We would have to have it in by December 15th of this
That's what
year.
I thought I heard you say.
Basically, what we'll do is I'll do the field work. I'll give Kevin the initial information so he can have new maps and have all the information here for you guys to look at the November meeting, and right after you guys approve it, he'll send it to DOT.
Yep.
Okay. Mark, you prepared to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the Pacer rating program to proceed at a cost not to exceed $750.
Excellent. I'll second that. I think that completes our discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Vision Triangle Ordinance and Procedures.
Basically, all you have
An
a
issue
copy.
near and dear to my heart since I needed to take out 2 attractive large trees a few years ago that were in the Vision Triangle.
Basically, this came from the Public Safety Committee for us to relook at our ordinance. Basically, this was, what normally goes on with the Vision Triangle is, normally, once a year, the patrol sergeant would go out, take a look at all the intersections in the village, if there's any that, and then he comes to me, we discuss them, everything else, then basically letters are sent out both by myself and the chief, basically telling the people what the ordinance say and everything else. And then, if they don't comply within so long, then the patrol sergeant goes back, meets with the residents, explains to them then. If necessary, we'll go out there and we'll actually measure off the distance for the Vision Triangle, so they actually know where the Vision Triangle is on their property. And basically how much vegetation has to be removed, whatever. They had one that, it took quite a while to get them to comply this summer. I guess at this time, the chief took us back to, to the Public Safety Committee, this basically to have the ordinance relooked at. He also, if you will see, sent copies of neighboring communities' ordinances regarding the vision triangle. They vary quite a bit. The only one who's basically the same as ours, the city of Richmond, has the same vision triangle as we do.
Ours is a constant measuring.
Yeah, ours is a
feature.
constant. We measure 35 feet both directions from the right of way or the property iron,
And these examples are
and then.
approved by DOT or somebody?
Yes,
who is-
it basically, this is something vision triangle, it can vary, everything else depending on what the municipality wants, but yes, you have to have some version of a vision triangle in your
Yeah,
ordinance.
yeah, but I mean, we can't technically say, come up with numbers ourselves. Somewhere you must be working off a standard.
Basically, what this,
safety
well, like I said,
pattern.
different communities have done different things, some have it, if it's a controlled intersection,
No,
it's a certain
I
size.
get, I get that. What I'm saying is the numbers we're seeing for these
Yeah.
various vision triangles are based on some sort of safety
Yeah,
standards.
all of them
Okay.
are approved by different,
Is there any indication that we should be considering a change in the current measurements that we have of the village triangle right now?
well, like, myself, the first ones you see like that, that's the City of River Falls. They actually have 3 different vision triangles depending on if it's, how the intersection is controlled by traffic signals. And basically myself, I think it would be a little more confusing if we did that than having it this set, like, standard for all intersections like we have now, you know, but basically, I guess what they're looking at us to do is to go over this and start, see if we do think there should be changes made to it. I know this is probably the first time that any of you have seen this, so I don't know if it's something you wanted to basically have everybody read over and put it on next month's.
Well, I know we've had, you know, it's not the first time I've heard about issues with the vision triangle, not at a meeting, certainly from people affected from it, so, you know, my gut reaction to something like this is if, some of the examples I've seen, and I think the one on Wisconsin, we're talking 35 in Wisconsin,
Wisconsin
the
says
perennial
correct.
garden down there.
Correct.
You know, I thought it looked pretty nice in considering the rest of the drive through North Hudson. It was nice.
Yes, they had a number of complaints from vehicles trying to pull off Wisconsin Street. There was quite a few near misses,
Uh,
including
Quite a
myself
few
one day.
near misses.
Yeah.
Okay. well,
Traffic accidents.
As I'm looking at this information on the first page under present information, it's indicating that we do have a property which has been identified as being in violation. Is this committee being asked to consider that property that's in violation, or are we being asked to consider whether or not there should be any changes made in our vision triangle measurements?
I believe that they're asking for is, well, basically, I think what they're looking for is, in 2010, when apparently when one of the officers went down there, they just basically told him it was 35 feet from face of curb, when it actually is 35 feet from the right-of-way, which is behind the sidewalk, so it made it basically another 10 feet wider than what. And I think what they're looking at is let's have something that's consistent, which our code book, if you read it, is consistent. It does say it's 35 feet from the property owner, or from the right-of-way, not from the
Well, it
face of
sounds like the
curb.
problem was the communication
The communication.
and discussion with the
yes.
property owner, not the ordinance
Correct.
itself. Okay. Well, I don't see anything wrong with the members of this committee reviewing this between now and the next meeting and having it on the agenda for finality. I don't know that it's productive at all to try and sit here and go through it now.
That's why I basically I just gave you a packet, kind of highlighted out and say, you know, this is something that, most vegetation now is gonna be kind of taken down this time of the year. You know, it's something that we can get ready to be placed in the code book before next, you know.
Well, Mark, why don't we do this? Why don't we make sure it's on the agenda for next meeting? Between now and then, we'll review it. Let's get a copy to trustee Wecken for his review, and we can indicate whether or not any of the members of the committee have any recommendation to change it next month, and if not, there it is. That's why specifically I was wondering about the property that's identified. If we're not being asked to do anything with that property, then I don't see any
At this
incentive
time,
to
I've
try
been
and-
by it, and I talked to the sergeant, and they feel like, you know, it's taken care of enough to get through until,
Fine. We'll take it, let's put it on the agenda for next month. Salt storage options.
basically, this one I've, oh. Basically, this one I've been working on for a thing, and I'm at the point where I really don't know what to tell you. It's basically, I've looked at different things, but no matter what we look at, it's gonna cost the village, you know, some money to get something up. Then I also look at, when I'm looking at this, I looked at the concrete highway, barriers like trustee Zappa asked me to have looked at. Problem is, I'm worried about them with the height of them and then the way they round out at the bottom. I'm afraid of during the winter time, they might be unsafe for our guys when they're pulling the tarps back. The only thing I really came up with is using some kind of a large timbers of some type. I did approach Gary Zapp, which I didn't actually get back to him again until today. And we're actually gonna meet tomorrow. He has some bridge timbers up on his property that they have. But the way it sounds, they were planning on pretty much using them for kind of a salt bin thing of their own. So, right now, I'm just kinda still sitting at this is, I might just be up to the point is just build some more of the, like we have now, we're holding salt now, just the bins, just out of plywood and, you know, treated material just to get by until this winter, until we can figure out what we're actually gonna do.
And the issue is, your belief is that if we pick up salt from the city in a larger quantity.
That is a
that it-
request of the city of Hudson too. They'd rather have us picking up between and storing more, so we have it during a snowstorm, instead of us calling them and having them have to send somebody to meet us to load our trucks during a snowstorm. They'd rather have us do the transferring of salt between snow events, which means we would have to be able to store more for a snow event on our, for ourselves.
At the risk of asking a question for which there may be a ready answer, but I'll confess I don't see the ready answer. As close as that salt storage is for us right now, why could the village not go down and load their own salt?
We have done that, but basically the city of Hudson would rather have us not. They'd rather have somebody there to load our trucks.
Understand that they would, but in the big picture, rather than them being required to send someone out to load our truck, and our people going down there and needing someone to load our truck cooperatively, wouldn't it be better for both entities, for the village public works department to go down there and load their own salt?
That's just not the way it's set up with the city of Hudson. They're set up with them is for their personnel to load our trucks.
Well, what do you want to do with this issue? We've talked about it for several months. I guess in summary, you're saying you still don't have a firm, this is what I want to do?
I don't have a firm solution, and what I'm looking at is the cost of building a bin and everything else. You know, that's.
As I see this issue is, I think it's something we've got to admit needs to be budgeted for realistically, otherwise we're gonna keep dealing with this every year, because the solutions that he's gonna try to come up with are gonna just be annual ones. And I think we need to recognize we have to store some salt up here. I mean, it doesn't help us right now. I think you're gonna have to find something to get by for this year.
That's what I'm thinking, have to build smaller
We've
bins.
done before. I think Public Works has to take a little harder look at this and recognize it as a situation and deal with it as a longer-term issue that we should deal with, that, you know, and have it solved for a few years rather than having this come up every fall. Where are we gonna store the salt? And I don't know
Yep.
about rearranging the, our arrangement with the city of Hudson is gonna be any help. I think that's, you know, they have their preferences and respect that. I think storing X amount of salt appears just a practical advantage anyway.
Might be a practical advantage, but I guess the disconnect that I'm still having conceptually is that salt is stored essentially on the border of the village.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we're going miles to get it.
But
And
I-
so to
but-
bring it from the border of the village nearly to the north border of the village,
But that might take, they don't want other people running their equipment or being at their facility.
I understand.
And I can't blame them at all for that.
And I think also if they're looking at, if we can store more on our own side, everything else, and they can actually get more in the salt shed up there.
And if we had storage in you know, in a perfect world, it would just be delivered to North Hudson, and that's where you'd store it. Take care of the streets. So we're piggybacking off them. It has to get to North Hudson, and I don't know, it's not a perfect arrangement, but I think it's one that kind of suits us. It's just a matter of getting some sort of semi-structure out there that has some permanence to it, that so they could get some salt in there. I think it needs to be done regardless of, doesn't matter how much we're even storing there. Okay, what have we ever used for salt storage besides plywood and some posts?
And that's basically all we've ever used.
Yeah,
since
so
we
I don't
started
care
with
if
it.
it's 6 yards or 20 yards or 30 yards. It's to not have something that reflects the permanency of storing salt is kind of underestimating or just ignoring the situation. And I'm not talking, we're not talking the, you know, county-type storage sheds that are treated timber. Or just, I'm even looking at some sort of like I mentioned to him, some like concrete highway divider, something so we can keep it in a place so it isn't getting pushed all over the place, so they can load up their trucks right there. And we don't have any budget for it, or we haven't recognized it as a real need. I'm just suggesting it doesn't help us right now, but treat it as a real need and get that done so we don't have to address it each year.
And if we would go through a milder winter and stuff, and we didn't use as much of what we have budgeted for salt, you know, the actual operating supplies of salt itself, maybe some of those funds could go in towards building something that's, you know,
Well,
I'm looking for something because we, you know,
yeah.
Well, Mark, I think you're right. We're not gonna solve it this year.
No.
It's nearly the end of October.
Yes.
And, so we're up against salt season right now. I think we get by another winter, but, yes, we have talked about this several years and have not come up with a solution. It would be a capital item, capital expenditure to invest in something with some ability. We need to solve this one way or the other so we don't just keep
Well,
agonizing over it.
it's over the obvious. I mean, each year we're gonna use salt, and not have some facility for it is sort of sticking our head in the collective sand or salt, as the case might be.
Or salt, yeah.
So
I understand where
you know
you're.
what I'm saying? I'm just saying we gotta.
I absolutely do.
We should treat it next year with a little more of
Yep.
seriousness. And get
I
it
understand
done.
where you're coming from. Where I'm coming from is redundancies I see costing money. So, I mean, there's salt storage and we're gonna also have a salt storage.
Yeah, but we have, you know, I tend to agree with you, but after being in that line of work of dealing with salt and snowstorms and plowing, we're gonna be more effective, more cost efficient with stuff on site. And even though it's just there, it's still going to get it, and respecting the city of Hudson's, their operations. I can tell you right now that if I had a situation where people were gonna come in and load their own vehicles, it wouldn't be happening. I don't care who it was or who I knew, they're not touching our equipment. We'll load it for you. And it would be a huge inconvenience to be doing that all the time. And when you need it, you need it. To me, the simplest thing is, we need some sort of storage containment for the salt, okay? If we talk about a little bigger, and I'm not talking about something with a roof and trusses, but just very simply, all we're talking about is something a little bigger. So marginally speaking, I don't see it being a huge expense, but we haven't spent much more than a nickel figuratively on containing salt up here. It's almost like we're waiting for, there's gonna be some other way we're gonna treat the streets, or we're gonna get it from somewhere else, it's gonna be airlifted in. I don't see us changing the method of operation. We get it from the city of Hudson, we gotta get it to North Hudson, because when they need it, it's best that we load our own trucks. Simply because I understand I don't really dispute their preference on having their own guys run their own equipment.
Well, Mark, I think the recommendation is we can't deal with it now. That's the recommendation, and we do need to deal with it next year. What I'm gonna want to have a better feeling from my perspective on this is if we do it, here's why it saves money for the village, as opposed to if we do it, it costs us more, but it's more convenient. I'm not certain I want to spend money for convenience, but I'm willing to spend money if it saves us money.
Well, you can look at it this way, if the city of Hudson says we don't want any part of this sort of arrangement anymore, then we better find a way to get salt up here and dumped up here
I would
and
agree.
stored.
That wouldn't be a
So,
matter of convenience, that would be a matter of that's what we need to do to get the salt.
To me, it means going back to City Hudson asking for a different arrangement. So I know, I got you.
Okay.
The only thing I will have to use some funds out of the operations, basically the salt. Things I also be able to build probably 2 additional bins to get us so we can actually carry as much as, They're not gonna be big, heavy bins like what we all talked about before, something with structure. It's gonna be more or less what we got right now and
Get us by.
get us by.
2012 Public Works budget.
Nothing, no action to be taken on that. Budget's already been sent. We just put it on there. Then after we
Yep.
put it on there, it was like, I really didn't need that
I
on
was
there.
surprised when I saw it there because
Yeah.
it was my understanding we're ready to review that at the board on the 1st.
Correct.
Okay. Engineers report, Kevin.
Not a lot.
Oh,
Basically, I guess we forwarded off the original LRIP application to the village, which will be sent off to the highway commissioner. I think the deadline on that is like the middle of November, so that is about it.
Are you in possession of any other anecdotal information, number of applications that may be coming in for the funds?
I know the city of Glenwood's gonna apply. I would envision the village of Woodville will. Other than that, I wouldn't know how many applicants there would
Alright.
be, so
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
that's it.
Okay. Mark?
just so y'all know, the fall street sweeping is scheduled for the week of November 7th. We are preparing a notice that will go into the Hudson paper and also on the village website.
How long does it normally take in terms of days to do the village?
Typically, well, depending on how many leaves come down, but a typical fall sweep is roughly around 4 days.
And that's Phillips? Yeah, does it? So during that period of time, we hope that there's calm and no wind, right?
Yes. And then also hopefully that notice will have on there is please remove all vehicles and trailers from your street until your street is fully swept curb to curb.
It'll be one pass on a street, right? I mean, it won't be repeated.
No, once
The
we
reason I ask that, I see the city of Hudson right now doing quite a bit of leaf cleanup, and that can't be their final leaf
No.
cleanup, because there's all kinds of
That's why,
leaves still to
that's
come
why,
down.
that's why we always wait until usually it's the first week
Right.
of November before we send in the sweeper.
Okay. If it's very calm, so that there is not any blowing when it's being dumped in a truck, does that reduce the amount of water that the sweeper needs to pick up? to
Yeah,
put
it
on
all
the leaves?
depends on, well, basically it depends on how much moisture is in the leaves themselves. Because even if the trucks, if the trucks head down the road at 25 miles an hour, it's real dry, the leaves are gonna pick up out of the truck anyway, so.
Okay.
It's basically, the sweeper driver is supposed to basically be keeping an eye on how much moisture's in there just to make sure that the leaves are not gonna blow back out.
Yeah, my concern was not how much water is being used, it was the time it takes to stop and load it up. I mean, if they don't have to do that, then go faster. Okay. Anything else, Mark?
That's all I have.
Well, gentlemen, if that is it, that completes our agenda, and we're adjourned.